So let's see together what will be the agenda of today's for this webinar. We will discover different scenarios and try to learn the best practice on surgical specimen collection and transportation. That will be the aim of today's webinar. Then, as mentioned by Michela, we will have a practical demonstration, live demonstration from our laboratory at Milestone headquarters. I want to start, first of all, with this slide that is the histopathology cycle, where you can see that everything starts and ends with the patient. Why I want to start with this slide? Because we must remember that the moment the specimen leaves the patient body, the diagnostic path and therefore the treatment starts. So today in this webinar, ultimately, we are talking to deliver to the patient the best possible treatment. We will be focusing in particular to the sample handling circle in this portion, where the specimen leave the team of the operating room, surgeons and nurses, and get transferred to a second team, the histology lab technicians. This important step is very critical because, as mentioned, there is the specimen that is moved from one team to another, and therefore is also the initial phase of the diagnostic path. The state of the art today for preserving the biospecimen is using 10% neutral buffer formalin. That is still the fixative use, majority of the case, for the histological sample preservation. This opens up the first critical consideration in the specimen handling for the histological diagnosis. Well, the first consideration is the formalin, because formaldehyde has been classified since 2016 by the International Agency for Cancer Research as carcinogenic and mutagenic to humans. So formaldehyde or formalin, basically a saturated water solution of about 40% of formaldehyde is basically 100% formalin. Okay? So the reclassification of formaldehyde face the safety officer in hospitals and hospital administrations, laboratory managers, to a different way to handle it, and therefore a higher cost for operator safety and disposal. So what is necessary to do when a substance declared carcinogenic need to be handled and it is present in the environment? Well, first of all, the regulation indicates that it's necessary to try to eliminate the substance or replace it with something less and or not dangerous at all. Yes, there have been different fixative in the market for years, alternative to formaldehyde, to formalin, but no one has today replaced the use of formalin that, as mentioned before, remain the state-of-the-art fixative for the biospecimen. So in case like this one, the elimination of formalin is not possible in almost the totality of the situation, what is necessary to do? Well, in that case, if a substitution is not feasible, it's necessary to use a closed system to comply with existing occupational exposure limits. And therefore, to minimize, the goal is minimize the worker exposition to that, to reduce the level of exposure as low as possible, and constantly monitor the worker's health. So situation like this one, see in the circle, where a nurse in the nearby dirty room in the operation room center dispense pour manually the formalin from a container into plastic bucket where the biospecimen is present are not possible anymore. Some group of pathologists or operating room nurses adopt what they so-called pre-fill formalin buckets. For pre-fill, I mean containers that arrive from the supplier sealed with already inside typically 50% of their volume with containing 10% neutral buffer formalin. So our basically operator in this case doesn't need to dispense formalin from a larger container, simply open the lid, drop the biospecimen and close the lid. So are pre-filled formalin buckets a good alternative to prevent exposure? Well, let me show you an interesting publication from 2016 published on Toxicology Research magazine. This was a study done on two groups of nurses from a group of hospitals in northwest of Italy, in the Piedmont region. So they asked to this group of volunteer nurses to do this research. So on routine basis, the first group of nurses handled formalin in the operating room using a formalin bucket and all pre-filled formalin containers, while the second group delivered specimen in fresh conditions, so they were not exposed to formalin in the operating room. Through two markers detected in urine analysis, the two markers basically are present in the body, and they get oxidized in presence of, in case of absorption of formaldehyde in the body. They measure the level of absorption, indeed, of formalin through detected through the urine analysis. The results were quite significant. The level of formalin detected in the body of the second group of nurses, so the one that did not manipulate formalin in the OR, was 75% lower, than the first group that handled formalin. So quite significant. Why not 100% lower reduction? Well, because formalin is still present in our daily life, like in clothes, furniture, food processing. So the industry use formalin during the items process. Of course, also the industry need to change the type of fixative use for. There is another critical consideration that need to be done in the biospecimen handling and collecting. The second critical aspect that I point out today is the need to we need to strongly consider the preservation of the molecular material of the biospecimen. In these past years, the progress in precision medicine and personalized treatment required to perform additional tests in addition to the morphological evaluation, normally done by pathologists. These tests are tests like DNA, RNA, and protease extractions for gene profile expression. For this test, it is important to maintain the tissue in perfect condition and to control the pre-analytical variables. For this reason, new guidelines have been released from pathology associations around the world, like the College of American Pathology, the European Society of Pathology. I will show in a moment a few examples. This paper, for example, from published in the recently, November 2019, in the Archive of Pathology, Laboratory Medicine, was done by a larger group of pathologists, and there was a call of action, a sort of call of action to find recommendation, pre-analytical recommendation for the molecular integrity of cancer patient biospecimens. I literally read from the bottom: specimen handling and documentation to ensure patient safety and accuracy of biomarker test results is crucial for the advancement of precision medicine. So there is a strong need to find standardization and a perfect way to collect the specimen. Not only the pathologist association, but also in this case, the American operating room nurses are pointing out how the specimen management need to be performed at the collecting point. This picture has been taken by a post done by this association, the American Operating Room Nurses Association, that they will do this series of webinars on the new guidelines update for 2021, where they include this recommendation. They also state that it's necessary, first of all, to take control of the pre-analytical variables and to be careful and pay attention to the exposure of operating room personnel from formaldehyde fumes. We know about the content because as Milestone, our US colleague has been called by the association to give their contribute on the revision of the guideline. So, in simple, the documentation and standardization of the pre-analytics variables is now a must. So, we must reduce the variables and make it a more standard procedure. To do that, data collection is fundamental to understand for pathologists when a fixation process starts. So, in addition to the case ID, obviously, that need to be tracked with the barcoding system, other data are necessary to be collected. I include the operator name because if the procedure is not handled correctly, we need to find a root cause analysis of that and rectify that maybe with more training at the collecting point. Date and time of operation, as mentioned, it's essential to understand when the fixation procedure starts or the collecting procedure starts. Therefore, biospecimen and fixity weight and the ratio between biospecimen and fixity. Obviously, the specimen may have different mass and volume, and therefore formalin ratio is essential to be always equal and constant. The last important parameter to be monitored, that today is not monitored, is the temperature condition. Why temperature condition? Because the fixation is a chemical process. And therefore, if the chemical process happen during the transportation in winter time or in summertime outside the hospitals, you may understand that the chemical process may be influenced by the temperature condition, colder or warmer weather. With these two considerations in mind, for the specimen handling, which options today are available? Well, definitely we have the option to collect and transport the specimen in fresh condition or collect and transport the specimen in formalin. So formalin, with all the consideration we have done, but still the state-of-the-art fixity. There is a logistic implication, definitely, that need to be considered because, like in the example on the top side, if operating rooms and histology lab are within or under the same roof, within the same hospital or campus, definitely the logistic of transportation is more easier and quicker or under control compared to reference histology lab that collect the specimen from different clinics and operating rooms. In any case, the transportation in fresh or with documented information can be done, obviously, in both logistic scenario. So, in case of the collection and transportation in fresh condition, a scientific validated and approved method is the utilization of vacuum bags at controlled temperature. For controlled temperature, I mean 4 degrees Celsius, so not below the freezing point. With this condition, histological specimen can be maintained up to 48 or 72 hours. The difference at 48 or 72 hours is depending by the type of tissues. The most resistant tissues, like a breast resection, for example, can last up to 72 hours. The importance is to maintain at 4 degrees Celsius the entire vacuum bag. And the vacuum, it's a good method to speed up the refrigeration of the biospecimen and the preservation from the surrounding environment. In this paper that's been released by the European Society of Pathology, they mention the guidance for laboratory performing molecular pathology for cancer patients. They indeed recommended the control of fixation time and temperature for molecular analysis of proteins. And they indicated vacuum packing of tissue and transfer to the laboratory at 4 degrees Celsius as one recommended option. As today, we have more than 50 scientific documented papers by independent group of pathology and institute that validate the vacuum transportation and collection and storing for examination. In case there is no alternative but placing the biospecimen in formalin at the operating room, by the operating room, our strong suggestion is to use automatic formalin dispensing system that prevent operator to get exposed to the fumes during the formalin dispensing. Not only system, but also dedicated bucket. In this case, Milestone developed a dedicated bucket with the lid built-in a valve that is, you will see in a moment in a light demonstration, prevent the any leakage of liquid and the fumes. So the suggestion, strong suggestion, and the best practice, as mentioned, is to take care of the biospecimen from the very beginning at the collecting point. Milestone developed a series of tools that, again, we will see shortly from our laboratory. You see listed here. 2 of them are vacuum system, Tissue Safe Plus and the Seal Safe, that use vacuum bags. These 2 systems vacuum seal the specimen with the difference that the Seal Safe, in addition to the vacuum, dispense formalin in a controlled way into the bag during the vacuuming process. The unit on the right side, the Ultra Safe, the latest development of Milestone, dispense automatically formalin in the dedicated bucket container with a valve on the lid. So the scenario now. Let's see when we have a fresh condition transportation, in this case, the utilization of vacuum bags. The Tissue Safe can be placed in the operating room, nearby the operating rooms, in the so-called dirty room, and it can serve several operating rooms. In this case, the tissue gets placed in the bag, transport at controlled temperature of 4 degrees Celsius, and get received to the pathologist, the pathology department, in fresh condition. A system, vacuum system like the Seal Safe can dispense formalin in a controlled way in the bag to start the initial fixation, and or reseal the bag with the remaining of the tissue for the final archive, with major benefit in space reduction and cost disposal reduction. So this scenario represents or introduce a lot of advantages, like the standardization of the fixation parameter, no formalin at all in the operating room. We had some users that for which the hospital administration forbid the use of formalin, banned the use of formalin in the operating room. So for pathologist department, there was no choice than use this type of delivery, fresh condition. The control of formalin fixation will happen in pathology department. So the pathologist will have the possibility to receive the specimen in fresh, do whatever they want to do for the molecular analysis, and control exactly and standardize exactly the formalin fixation time. Then, as mentioned, that there is a dramatic reduction in disposal cost due to the reduction in space and dumping material. We need to keep in consideration in this case that the tissue will arrive fresh, and therefore the grossing for a pathologist assistant will be done for fresh tissue, on fresh tissue. The second scenario, On the contrary, is the collection and transportation in formalin. As mentioned, a system like the UltraSafe can avoid the exposure for operating room personnel. And in this case, the transportation happened more in a traditional way, but with advantage that the UltraSafe will automatically record and provide information about the fixation parameters, starting point, and volume, all the rest. In this case, the tissue arrives partially fixed to the pathology department, and the same bucket could be used for the archive. In this case, I already mentioned some of the advantages, but again, the advantage in this case is the standardized fixation parameter. No need to revalidate the procedure if a laboratory already received the tissue in formalin. The control of fixation parameters definitely is one big step of advancement. No formal exposure in the operating room and the standardization of fixity ratio. In this case, the tissue arrives partially fixed in the laboratory. I have, and we have actually, some users that have a mixed scenario, so fresh and fixed tissue. Because it happened that for the majority of the tissue, it was okay, the transportation in formalin, but for some other tissue, there was the request to get store and transfer in fresh. For example, we have an American hospital that requested the tissue to be kept in vacuum bag, the placentas, for example, to be kept in vacuum bag directly in the labor and delivery department. And then only the ones that were necessary to perform the pathological examination were transferred to the pathology department, even after 2 or 3 days. The rest, they were remaining in vacuum bags and then disposed directly from the labor and delivery department. So in this scenario, nothing prevents to still use a vacuum system in the pathology department to vacuum seal the biospecimen, and to get advantage of the reduction of space for the archive. On that regard, I have a couple of pictures. The one on the left side, that is a classical archive of buckets with all the storing that happened in the pathology department for the remaining of the tissue. On the right side, there is a picture taken from one user, one pathology department, that was basically the vacuum packing of the tissue during a day. And so the tissue, remaining tissue of the day were put in the plastic bin on which there is the list printed out by the machine itself with all the identification number of the cases contained in that bin for that day. In that case, the reduction calculated also in a white paper that is available on our website, we can save up to 75% in space reduction, but most important, 50%, up to 50% in disposal cost. In particular, when we consider that the disposal cost in these days rise up based on the fact that formaldehyde is carcinogenic. So now there are specialized companies that take out and dispense the media for the laboratory. So before leaving the word to the stage to my colleague Marco, the takeoff conclusion of my presentation, as mentioned at the beginning, are these two: eliminate formalin exposure for operating room and pathology laboratory personnel. Today is a must. We cannot go around it anymore. Second point, for the precision medicine molecular diagnostic advancement, the standardization and documentation in the pre-analytical step is essential. Same thing, we cannot go around anymore. Don't forget, the diagnostic process and therefore the best treatment outcome start the moment the biospecimen leaves the patient body. Thank you for your attention. I give the now stage to Marco Perrella.
Thank you, Marco, and good afternoon. Today, before we go in some further details of these three instruments I have with me here, it's really important for me to speak about the four principles that led the development of all these devices. So which are the safety for the specimen, safety for the user, documentation, and standardization. And these last points are the reason why on each of these instruments you do have a printer and a barcode. As first, I want to speak about tissue safe. So in order to give you a better sight, I need to change 1 second the camera angle, and so we can see it from the top. Tissue safe, it's an instrument which is has been developed mainly for fresh tissues. And since it works with bag, the first attention goes to the bag I have with me here. So here I only have 2 of the 4 available, but I have from the smaller up to the larger ones. And that gives me the occasion to just show you the broad range of specimens you can cover with all these bags. On each bag, you do have a unique barcode. On this barcode, you do have information about the bag size, how many times this bag has been used. And after a procedure, like the one I will perform in a few moments, after the procedure, I will have an association between the identification code of the bag and the identification of the patient. For the sake of this demo, I do have with me already a sample inside the bag. So, and working with tissue safe, it's really intuitive and straightforward. In order to proceed, you just need to scan the identification code of the bag, the ID of the patient, the requisition form, place the bag inside the cavity, and select the intensity of vacuum. Here I will select the strongest. Simple pressure on the cover will be just enough to start the procedure. What you hear now is the air which is getting removed from the cavity. And this air is getting out through an HEPA filter. I will anticipate that at the end of the procedure, all the information of this specific procedure will be printed here with the printer I want to now. The vacuum has completed. Now the bar is sealing the edges of the bag, and the air will flow again back into the cavity. On this level here, now I do have all the information of this procedure, such as date, time, which kind of level of pressure I applied, and also the identification of the operator who has done the procedure. Of course, this I can peel it, I can open it, and stick it physically, bind those information to the specimen. Of course, these information are printed on the sticker, but they are also stored in the system. And those information can be retrieved anytime by the laboratory, the informatic laboratory, toward CSIC. But before to do that, I want to recall you the fact that Marco mentioned also in this presentation, that in cold condition, this specimen can be maintained optimal morphology up to 72 hours. And that's why Milestone has developed the temperature data logger that can be loaded here on the side of the instrument at the end of the procedure, and then can be coupled together with the specimen. On the moment of the activation, the temperature of transportation up to the reaching point, which might be, for example, the grossing table, can be monitored. And so we have the complete traceability also of the transportation. As promised, we move now toward seal safe. And already from its design, you can see that the same principle of tissue safe have been maintained. However, seal safe has the capability to couple vacuum with the possibility to dispense formalin. And now we are not speaking just dispensing formalin, but also to precisely track when the fixation has started and how much formalin did you pour into the bag. And in order to do that, that's why in the cavity here, you do have a scale to monitor the weight of the specimen and the precise amount of formalin. Since we are dealing with fluids, I want to mention the other two bags available here, which are the so-called self-standing bags. The name is self-explanatory, are bags which are designed to stand up vertically, even if they have specimen and fluid inside. Also in this case, I have a sample already ready. And in the cavity, and in order to start the procedure, I just need to scan the identification code of the bag, the identification of the patient, and place it in the cavity. I can have these magnets which add further stability to the bag. And now I do have, instead of vacuum, I do have here on the display the ratios. What do they mean? Basically, I will select 1 to 2 for this demo. It means that for each gram of specimen, the system will dispense 2 grams of formalin. I will select 1 to 2, and I will arm the injection nozzle. As tissue set, just the pressure onto the cover will start the procedure. There will be a first phase of vacuum followed by the injection of formalin. Now, what is really important and I do care to show you is that you have the specimen weight here, and in real time you can see increasing the amount of formalin. So that's what I mean for documentation. You have all the weight of formalin here. One thing that I take advantage of this close-up is that all the cover here, and as well in the other instrument, is an antibacterial coating based on silver iron, so for user safety. Now the procedure is terminated, and the sealing is getting completed. As you can see, up to the end of the procedure, I was never in contact with formalin because all the dispensing of formalin is taking place inside a protected environment. Now the bar is sealing the bag, and I will get a label with all the information. Similarly to tissue safe, also here I do have the complete documentation, the identification of the operator, date, time, but moreover here we do have also the weight of specimen, amount of formalin, and ratio between these two. Again, I can physically bind this information on top of the bag, and now I will have my specimen under vacuum with formalin. Here, since we are already here, we do have the drawer, which is a ventilated drawer, from where you can load the reagent into the cavity. Here, the point here is that you can load any kind of commercially available tank. Here you have a Cubitainer and a 5-liter tank. Again, this drawer is ventilated, so for user safety. move now towards the third part of this presentation. And I need to go back to the previous camera. Once we get the principle of documentation, traceability, and safety for the previous two instruments, the same principles are made for ultrasound. So therefore, it's really intuitive even to work with ultrasound. Despite from the first two instruments, ultrasound work with buckets. And speaking with buckets, here I will have the bucket available from the 1 liter up to 10 liter bucket. And all of them comes in a transparent of white version. And this range of size is are designed to cover the vast majority of samples you're going to face in your daily routine. In order to introduce you the practical part, now I will simulate as I pretend to be the operator, which we see a surgical piece in the surgery room. Now I will receive the specimen and I close the cover here. And one thing very important that it's very important for me to share is that in a traditional bucket, what happens is that in order to pour formalin, the cover has to be removed, or maybe you pour without cover at all. And in that moment, you are exposed to the fume of formalin and to the potential pathogens connected, linked to the specimen. Thanks to the unique valve of ultrasound, now the operator just closed and can walk towards the ultrasound without need of reopening. And as you can see by the design of the valve, the specimen is completely isolated from the external world. As in the previous instrument, I need to scan one of the barcode on top of the bucket, scan the requisition form of the patient, and place on top of the scale. I will just slightly zoom to give you a better sight. I, on purpose, put it not in the center, is off center, because one of the features is that the system will automatically center the bucket. Once the door is closed, I can select the ratio. The cavity, it is ventilated, of course. And you see the auto-centering, and beside the cavity, the fact that the cavity is ventilated, here you can see that there is an additional ventilation. So you have a redundancy of security measurement. Now the pump will start to inject formalin, and I wanted to measure a few other features, such as you can see that there is an LED that shows the status of the machine. Now with blue at the end, it turns green to give you an immediate feedback of the status of the machine. And plus, you do have UV lamp. So at the end of any procedure or at the end of the day, you start automatically, you have the possibility to disinfect the cavity with UV light. The procedure is now terminated, and I get a label with all the information. Before to attach those information to the bucket, the user simply needs to take out to close the bucket inside the cavity. And now can attach all the information. And now this sealing is airtight and watertight. Therefore, you are completely safe from formalin fuel, and you can even flip it without any risk for your health. With this part, I will conclude. And
good morning or good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for being with us today for this webinar. I am Michele Martinelli, and during this webinar, I will focus on the several benefits of digital macro imaging for grossing step in pathology. Together, we will challenge the status quo. The rapid progresses of world slide imaging device, the advancement in software, algorithm, and high-speed networking have surely created a real boost for digital imaging for pathology. Simultaneously, these also have highlighted the disparity and significant gap of slide scanning versus documentation of the grossing phase. This last one is still too often based on traditional and old description techniques. It is clear that there is an underestimation of the role of documenting the grossing procedure. And I'd like to start with this following interesting quote from Professor Rosai about the dissection. If the dimensions of the specimen are not recorded, the key section not taken, and the proper special studies not performed at the time of the initial gross examination, the chances of acquiring this information may be lost forever. So better and more detailed the description, better is the context of the case under analysis we can provide to the pathologist. The glass slide represents, in fact, only a small portion of the dissected tissue. Currently, the most common procedures are based on a test description of the sample that is from time to time also combined with a hand-drawn diagram. This helps to obtain a better characterization of the tissue that obviously is not so easy to describe with a word only. These procedures are therefore subjected to limitations. They are strongly dependent by the ability of the operator for both description and even more for sketching the biospecimen. Clearly, not all the pathologists have the same drawing skills. These procedures are labor intensive, takes time to describe and even more to properly draw the tissue and add all the relevant nodes. These procedures are also not standardized because every operator uses a different set of words and may have a different perception of colors and maybe dimensions. All this information, even if carefully collected, could be sometimes misinterpreted by the pathologist when analyzing the slide. Pathology is very image-based. It is estimated that almost a quarter of the human brain is involved in the processing of visual signals. So we are much better equipped to elaborate what we are looking at rather than what we are listening to and reading. It is well known that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and this is even more true in pathology. In this field, the description of the complex cases is particularly challenging. Is this ivory or creamy white? And about the dimension, how many millimeter is a nut size, and how many millimeter is an orange size? A picture with digital sizing is surely much more true to life and immediate. An alternative is the use of commercial cameras for digital documentation. This method is actually used in only 10–15% of the labs due to the several drawbacks of the system. It is very time-consuming, not standardized, risky for the traceability of the pictures, and therefore difficult to implement into the routine. Pathologists are very creative and constantly find a personalized solution to fill this gap. What can we say? Congratulations. The MacroPath solution is based on a transparent technology, an integrated approach between software and hardware, and easy to use. Intuitive by nature, it can improve the productivity and the quality without delays in the grossing routine. In 1998, Milestone created the very first MacroPath digital imaging system, specifically designed for pathology sector, which then became the unmatched gold standard. And for the past 20 years, MacroPath has been continuously improved, and we are proud to have thousands of MacroPaths in daily use in pathology labs around the world. In the Ackerman-Rosai surgical pathology text, the MacroPath is the only one featured in both 9th and then also the 10th edition. MacroPath system is designed to be an extremely flexible. As a self-standing photo set integrated into an existing grossing station and built in our Milestone innovative grossing centers. MacroPath is a quality and a productivity tool. Quality is always Milestone's priority, and MacroPath combines a very high resolution with an extremely high optical and digital zoom, with an extreme focus on light and color fidelity of the images. And a productivity tool because provides a significant shorter turnaround time for each case and time saving in sample description. Therefore, it is possible to save an important amount of hours of labors every week. MacroPath offers a very lean workflow. Start a new file with a quick barcode case ID entry, digitize the requisition form, create quickly an image library of sample, perform automatic sizing directly onto the calibrated picture, automatic block key indication, and correlation of label cassette and sample tissue. In real time, this information could be also automatically shared with the pathologist, sent directly to their PC for better diagnosis and enhanced diagnostic reporting. We will now quickly go through the 5 main good reasons to implement the MacroPath into your daily routine. In reality, there are many more, but our time together is limited. Number 1, documentation. The possibility of a complete and detailed description of all the cases with images plus audio and video recording. Number 2, there is traceability because it is possible to create the cases folders using 1D or 2D barcodes to reduce the risk of mistyping. The case ID will be embedded in all file names and even overimpressed in JPEG to exclude the possibility of a mismatch. Number 3, coaching and second opinion. MacroPath allows remote consultation, allowing medical personnel to easily discuss the case in real time during their section. It could be also a valuable tool for coaching and education. Number 4, pathologist and PA live interaction. In case of need, pathologist and pathology assistant can be in a position to discuss live while grossing about orientation, margins, and so on via local area network or even via internet. Connect and consult without even leaving the desk. Number 5, last but not least, it is possible to dramatically enhance the reporting by adding digital macro images. Moving from the standard one, that is basically only a long text, to the improved one, which includes also microscopic images, to report that is really needed. This last one could be understood by oncologists, surgeons, clinicians, and even patients themselves. In summary, the macropath is a major visual complement to standard description. The availability of images eliminates vagueness in the description. It eliminates the need of hand drawing or long text, and enables detailed observation and full documentation. It can provide a rapid and accurate measurement of the sample, a precise labeling, and a full documentation for both QC and also QA. This picture is only one of the many examples of labs that have successfully implemented macropath for their complete routine, with a macropath for each station and a total of about 10 units in the same lab. Let's now move to the latest innovation of the macropath that has just been launched this week. Today, the macropath could be controlled using its touchscreen point-of-care terminal, the foot pedal, and the waterproof keyboard that provides already a very nice and direct interface with the instrument. This control will be now complemented by an innovative eye tracking command to make it even more easy to use. This new way of interaction with macropath system is called LUX. It consists of a sensor bar positioned in front of the macropath touchscreen terminal. But how does LUX work? The LUX sensor bar monitors the movement of the eyes of the operator and sends the commands to the PC. It is possible to select different functions in this way. Open a new case, zoom in and out, take picture, start video and audio recording, everything completely touch-free. Which are the benefits? LUX can improve in this way the safety by preventing contamination, very important aspect in this period. It can improve productivity with hands-free interaction. It can offer maximum user experience and maximum flexibility, with the possibility of using glasses, contact lenses, and face shield. What about autoptic procedure? These several benefits of the macropath could also be applied to autopsies. The answer is certainly yes. MacroView is the macro digital imaging for advanced anatomical and forensic investigation. This system consists in a digital imaging module mounted on an extensible swing arm that allows smooth movement over the body under investigation, a touchscreen control terminal, a keyboard, and is battery operated and mounted on a mobile card for flexibility. The unit is extremely versatile. As mentioned before, it is mounted on wheel and battery operated up to 8 hours of use and could be easily moved to different autopsy tables and even different autopsy rooms. MacroView can be the best solution for several applications that need complete documentation. Diagnostic postmortem, forensic postmortem, veterinary labs for necroscopy of animals, but also for disaster victim identification. Likewise, MacroView can also be a perfect complement for education, with the possibility to connect a remote location, sharing pictures in real time, and streaming live videos. Which are the benefits? MacroView reduces turnaround time and costs. It captures and stores images for area of interest in a fraction of time. Eliminate extended audio tape description, even for future transcription, and eliminate need of use of digital commercial cameras. Even more benefits, you can edit images and annotation in the convenience of your office. You can compile a library of images readily available for investigating officers. And you can store images automatically in a conjunction with a case ID number. Milestone with MacroPath and MacroView challenge the status quo. We believe in thinking differently because the future is digital. Thank you very much for your attention. I leave now the stage to Beatrice and Marco for the live demonstration of the unit.
This is Beatrice Gamba speaking. Good morning, everybody. Together with my colleague Marco in the lab, it's our pleasure to talk about our state-of-the-art solutions for macro imaging and documentation. Before covering the practical aspect of the demo, it's important to consider that the final aim of documentation and traceability is to achieve results that are independent from time, location, and external factors. With this goal in mind, Milestone has developed MacroPath and MacroView, which are the two solutions for macro digital documentation. We can now start with MacroPath, which is the result of years of experience in the field of digital pathology. MacroPath is a system which is composed by a 20-megapixel camera, a point-of-care waterproof touchscreen terminal, and a foot pedal device to control all the main functions of the camera hands-free. MacroPath has been designed to be flexible. Here you can see it installed as a table stand configuration and mounted on the eGross, the most advanced ergonomic grossing station in operation. Through the largest set of adapters provided by Milestone, it can be incorporated in any pre-existing grossing station. MacroPath is very simple to use, and the operator can open a new case by simply scanning the case ID from the requisition form. What you see right now is a shared screen of the MacroPath point of care. Once the case is open, everything can be documented, and the operator can take descriptive images of the sample from different angles. Now the operator is using the foot pedal control to control the zoom and save the pictures. When the description of the entire sample through the images is finished, the operator can move on to cut the part of interest. This way of cutting is just an example. The part of interest can be truly investigated and documented thanks to the 30 times optical zoom. Since it is an optical and not a digital zoom, the power of resolution is striking and unmatched. What you get in the end is an image with a professional-like camera quality, but with the simplicity of a point-to-shoot camera, since there's no need for fine-tuning the camera settings. Such detailed images represent a powerful tool both for diagnosis and for scientific publications. Videos or audio as MP3 files can also be recorded and stored for documentation and teaching. All the generated files are visualized in the right part of the screen and can be retrieved by a simple click. Once the image is selected, all editing tools appear on the left side of the screen. One other thing to notice is that all the information about the specific case is always automatically embedded in the picture. This is an essential feature for maintaining the traceability and documentation through the laboratory grossing routine. The connection of MacroPath with the LIS is easy and straightforward through the case ID code. In the editing mode, there are many tools that can be used to further document the grossing procedure. You can measure an interesting area, measure the sample size, and even add a text note. It's possible to add sections in order to document which part of the sample has been selected for processing. This selection could also be made remotely by the pathologist, who indicates live to the technician which part to cut and put in the cassette. At the end, the piece for processing can also be measured directly inside the cassette. MacroPath is made for documentation and traceability, and for this reason, the creation of a descriptive report has been made very simple. It's sufficient to search for the case, select the most relevant images, and an editable report can be automatically generated. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Since innovation is part of the Milestone DNA, we now present you for the first time Lux, which is the new system to control all the main functions of the MacroPath with the user's eyes. This system can be easily mounted on the screen with a magnet and plugged in into one of the USB ports available in the computer. It can be integrated in all the most recent versions of MacroPath with a simple software upgrade. Thanks to Lux, that can track all eye movements of the operator, all the main functions can be covered by simply looking at the relative icons. The operator can now work completely hands-free and without the need of touching the screen or anything else. The bubble you see moving across the screen shows Marco's gaze. The user can now document the case controlling the zoom, save pictures, and take videos by simply looking at the icon functions. Lux has been developed to be a robust system, and once calibrated to the user's eyes, there's no problem if the user puts on protective face mask or goggles. Lux, it allows you to open your eyes to a whole new way of interactivity. All the advantages of MacroPath have been built in the MacroView system. MacroView is an ideal tool for diagnostic post-mortem investigations, forensic post-mortem, and veterinary lab for necroscopy. MacroView is made of a point-of-care waterproof touchscreen terminal mounted on a mobile cart with batteries that allows the system to work independently from the power source. A camera is mounted on a swing arm. The camera is built in a manipulator that contains all the functions necessary for the documentation, such as zoom in and zoom out, save image button, audio and video recording. A spotlight can also be used. The software interface connected to the camera is made to be immediate and icon-driven, as the one you have seen in the MacroPath, which makes it very easy for any user to master all the functions in a very short time. Once the case ID is inserted in the MacroView software, a new case is opened, and all the saved images are stored on the right side of the screen and can be retrieved at any time. All the features of MacroPath software are available with MacroView. MacroView, the macro digital imaging solution for advanced anatomical and forensic investigations. MacroPath and MacroView. The future is digital.